I don't want Canada Dry. I want American Wet. That would be.
Hey, that was just
Joint Fight Club.
You
Teach
know?
you to close your hand.
We'll teach you
Close
to
this
close
open
your
hand stuff.
don't break your thumb, right? Yeah. So
Tuck the thumb.
Welcome to Figuring It Out. I am Joseph, and this is not Linda. This is a special guest we have here. This is Pastor Vince Stiffler. He's on our pastor team here. We'll get to Vince in just a little bit. And Vince, you can chime in on anything we talk about until we get like specifically to your stuff. And we got Caleb on Megadesk as always, or as usual anyway.
I'm back.
So Caleb's back on Megadesk. The only time we don't have Caleb is when we have too many people up
When
here.
you have important people.
When we
on.
have Nate and Rhett and the dynamic duo, or what did you call them
Celebrity
earlier?
couple.
The celebrity couple
nice,
that
nice.
we have. Anyway, they'll be back in actually a couple of weeks with Linda and without me. So that'll be fun and interesting. We'll see how that goes.
Pray for us on that one.
Pray for us. But anyway, Caleb, I got a slice.
Hit me.
Vince, you know about this too.
Yep.
Last night, so what at the time we're recording this, last night was the Oscars. I do not watch the Oscars. Vince, do you guys watch the Oscars?
we do not watch the Oscars.
Caleb, do you watch the Oscars?
No. But I have seen what you're getting at.
Yes.
So Twitter blew up all at one time. We're just kind of chilling at my house. We're just hanging out. We had a youth campfire hangout. I had just gotten showered and everything and just was sitting down to find something to watch for the night. Oscars was not on that list. And Twitter blows up with Will Smith punches Chris Rock.
Yeah.
Well,
And I was like,
Was
it's
it a
about
punch?
time. You know, that's
was
that's
it
my
a
first-
real punch? Right.
Well, so that was the first thing that came out because it happened so fast. No one actually knew what happened. Everybody's like, what in the world did just happen? What it really was an open hand slap. Okay, let's just be real. Because I was a little let's see.
Yeah.
I saw the video pop up and I was a little disappointed. Like, I was like, all right, you telling me Will Smith with a punch can't knock an unknowing Chris Rock down?
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. Come on.
I was like, listen, Will, you got to
This
get
is
back in
Will
the gym,
Smith.
man. Because I was like, Chris Rock, hands behind his back, gets punched and he doesn't go to the ground. Oh no! But it then they slowed it down and gave you a good look, and it was an open hand slap. And I was like, wow! And everybody in the world was like, wow! And then everybody starts asking the question, like, was that real?
Right. Right.
And so, well, let's talk about the situation, and then we'll take a vote on whether it was real or not. Okay.
Yep.
So the situation was Chris Rock, as he is a comedian, he's presenting an award. I don't even know what award he was presenting.
Right.
But he's making some jokes about some people that were up for nomination for the award, and he's kind of going through like they always do. Like, you make jokes about the people. You know, I guess that's their way of trying to humble them before they get their award.
Yep.
I don't know.
That works if you win the award. I
That's
guess.
right.
If not,
If not, you just got made
Just
fun
got
of.
roasted
You
for
got
no reason.
roasted.
Yeah.
But so, all right, Chris Rock's up there, and I'm not a Chris Rock fan per se. Are you?
I like Chris Rock.
You
Yeah,
like Chris
I do.
Rock? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
No. Okay. Well, Michael Scott likes Chris Rock in The Office.
Yeah.
That's the whole situation of Diversity Day, right? And so Chris Rock's up there making his jokes, and he points out, he like glances over. Apparently, Will Smith is up for this, or his wife Jada is up for this award. I'm not sure which one, but he just kind of scans the crowd. He's talking about the guy who's up for the award, and then he glances over and he sees Jada, and it's almost like it's an unscripted joke a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's like he notices her there, and you know she's bald. She's got
Right.
some autoimmune situation
Alopecia or
where
something.
alopecia or
Yeah.
something where
Right.
her hair fell out. So it's not a choice that she doesn't have any hair necessarily, but he kind of does a double take, and then he makes a G.I. Jane joke about Jada, like G.I. Jane 2, Jada Pinkett Smith, like the joke he made right before. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
I'm ready to
there is.
unpack it, but you know, all right. So basically, he makes a bad a joke that's really just poor in taste about her not having any hair, as if it's a choice for her, and Anyway, and nobody really laughs that hard at it, and then he has to like tell the crowd
Yeah.
that was a good one, you
Yeah,
know.
You kind
Right.
of hear the and he goes, "What? That what?" Like,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
kinda
Right.
shocked
And then
that
all
it
of a
didn't
sudden,
hit.
like, you know, less than 5 seconds later, here comes like Will Smith walks into the shot. He's on stage, and Chris Rock doesn't. It's like he's not quite sure how to handle the
Well,
situation.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. keep going,
We're,
keep going,
we're
keep
about
going.
to talk about that.
Yeah, I know. Keep going.
But so Will Smith walks and he's just kind of casually walking, and then Chris Rock kind of looks like, I forgot what he says, but he's like, "Oh, hey, what you gonna do?" And Will Smith just bam, and Chris Rock is like, "Whoa," you know, like,
Yeah.
and then Will Smith just casually walks off the stage and sits back down, like. Like nobody says boo
Right.
to Will Smith. He just sits back down and they go along. And Chris Rock, there's an exchange there that American TV censored. You can find the uncensored version, but basically it is Will Smith continuing to shout down Chris Rock
Right.
with some expletives.
Yeah.
And Chris Rock finally tries to calm the situation, like, okay, I'm not going to talk about your wife anymore. And so then he moves on, and they go forward with the award, which everything from that point forward in the Oscars,
Just
what I heard was just super
awkward.
awkward.
Yeah,
Just super
I'm sure.
awkward. And, you know, there's all these questions. Was it real or was it scripted? Why did it look like Will Smith was laughing up to the point to where he slaps Chris Rock, basically? And then
Yeah.
why did Will Smith not get in trouble for this, for like
Right.
assault, right? There's all these questions that come up. So let's start to peel the onion a little bit.
Yeah.
What's your take on this just in general, Vince?
Well, the whole incident itself kind of reminds me of that Batman and Robin meme, you know, that you see. You know, that's one of the first things that kind of came to my mind, right?
Yes, yeah.
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, whether it was scripted or not. You know, I mean, I guess I don't know if we'll ever really know unless they admit to it.
Do you think it was?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, number one, Chris Rock's not a big guy, right? I mean,
No, he's not.
Will Smith is a decent sized guy, I guess, but I mean, it sounded like a hard slap, and yet Chris Rock just kind of laughed it off, almost nervously, you know, as if it wasn't a big deal. So it's hard to say whether it's actually made up or not. These guys are actors after all, you know.
The manhood in you. So somebody said that you know, they were like, was that Will Smith's Oscar presentation? Because if so, he needs to win the award. Like, that was some good acting right there. Yeah. So I'm with you. But the manhood in you, like, even if you're Chris Rock, like, you don't want to like act like a sniveling like coward
Right.
to that. So it's like, boom,
that
okay, I just took my leg.
That lower lip, you know. You know,
And, like Pastor John. Pastor John was just talking about Jason after a spanking, you know.
yeah, there you go.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Jason. Sorry we had to do that to you.
No, I mean his manhood was definitely in question at that point, and I think he showed a pretty good jaw, right? I mean, he took a pretty good shot. It sounded like, you know?
I couldn't even tell. I was looking for his face to start twitching or to swell up or the
Yeah.
bruise, anything.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah.
No, he probably went
Couldn't
back.
tell it.
He probably went backstage later on and was doing just that. You know, his little lower lip. You know,
he wasn't on stage for that long, so let's
Right.
just be real. Like he probably went backstage and was like, "What just happened?" You know?
Yeah.
If it was real, Caleb's not so sure that it was
I'm
real.
on Team Rigged here. I don't know that it was real. And here's what I got is that if they wanted to like take some great actors or a situation and kind of make it fake.
You think Chris Rock is
these
a great
are
actor?
No, but Will Smith. Will Smith. That's right. Mr. Award winner can do it. So the fact that it wasn't a punch, that it was a slap, I'm
yeah.
like,
You think it was an old wrestling move?
I think so.
WWE?
Like, maybe he leaned into it.
Did
and
he
just went away.
stomp as soon as he hit? You know,
Who was it? Triple H that just yeah. Bam. So I don't know. I'm kind of on the. It's probably rigged because we're talking about it right now and nobody's watching the Oscars.
There was
and they're
definitely
going
a
down.
thud that came from Chris Rock's microphone.
Definitely, yeah. And he probably did get hit, but I
Yeah.
bet you he knew he was getting hit, and maybe there's something going on. I just don't think
you
do
think
this.
so? Okay.
Surely
I do.
they got a
I don't think
slow-mo
you do
view
this.
of it
Here,
or something,
all right.
don't
So
they?
all the people that are in Caleb's camp, okay,
Raise your hand right now. I'm counting.
all right.
Okay.
Okay,
I
here we
think
go.
I personally think it's real. I'll tell you why I think it's real in a minute. But everybody who's in Caleb's camp says this. Will Smith was laughing at all the jokes and then all of a sudden gets up and does this thing.
Well, that's my other point too, is like when he went to do it, he like was laughing at it, and there's the whole thing on like, oh, he was laughing at the joke ahead of time, so he thought it was funny, and then he saw his wife's reaction and was like, oh, all right, I got to make up for this, and then he stood up. So that's one take.
Possibly.
Yeah, my take on it is that he knew this was coming, and he missed his cue, and they was like, oh wait, this is when I was supposed to, and they caught him early, and then he got up and then did his thing.
I mean, is there any history there between?
Yes, there is.
Yeah,
that's one thing. There is history there where Chris Rock has made some bad remarks about Jada or Will Smith, one of the two, and they've had some like cuss out matches before.
There's some stuff going on with Will Smith and Jada have had this really weird like relationship. That's
that's not podcast appropriate.
No, it's not. So Chris is in the middle of that a little bit too, from what I understand.
Gotcha.
In the past. So
okay.
Well, here's what I can tell you this. So I think here's what I think, and this is why I think it was real. 2 reasons.
Okay.
The laughing part. Okay, I think that it was hangover laughter from the joke before. All right, so he was saying these jokes in repetition. I think Will was caught in that laugh. Cameras go to Will because he had just referenced them in the joke before, and then when he references them, he looks and then makes the Jada Pinkett Smith joke. So as Will is laughing at that joke, and Will Smith is this kind of guy. So I've watched enough Will Smith stuff like just his social media stuff. I've watched enough of it. Not that I know Will Smith, but he's got that personality of like swagger a little bit. So it's like he can go from like mid laugh to, oh, now I got to do this. And like, you know, it wasn't like he had to turn on rage to get up there. It was just kind of like laughing. And it's like, oh, you went there. Okay. And then like, now it's like Swagger Will gets up there to do the slap. So I think it was that.
I can buy that.
I think it was that. And then once Will sits down, he continues to shout down Chris Rock.
Yeah.
If it was a bit, I don't think that happens.
That's probably true. But we'll never know. So I'm
we'll probably never, except for Will's acceptance speech when he finally did win the Oscar that night, which is so awkward. If it was real,
he can act, man. You know what I'm saying? There's a guy.
I mean, the Pursuit of Happiness, right there. You know, where he has the tears coming down. If you saw that movie with Will Smith years ago, where he has the tears flowing, right?
I made it like halfway through that movie, and then we quit because it was so hard to watch. And apparently, it gets better, but it never got better for me.
It's a great movie, but it's definitely tough to watch, right?
Yeah.
But I see. I don't know. I think there's a couple things. Number one, do they have a new movie coming out? That'd be number one. Number two,
Bad Boys, whatever. Bad Boys 15.
Well, but wasn't Will Smith like in a Muhammad Ali movie? So if wasn't he Muhammad Ali?
He did.
I didn't see it.
Or
Cassius Clay or something like that. You know,
it was Ali.
Ali.
Yeah.
It's
called Ali.
So why in the world would he slap him? I mean, this is, Muhammad Ali never.
He
come
did
on.
put up that hand like Chris Rock was about to throw like a counter punch. Like, Chris Rock's not about to throw a counter punch.
Well, he's in the gym doing that kind of stuff normal. So I'm wondering if that was just like reaction, like
muscle memory.
He went for the bag and his arm came up with it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the other thing too is, maybe the fact that there aren't charges being brought up. Yeah, they're celebrities and all that, but does that lend itself to more of Caleb's credibility in terms of that it's a fake thing?
Well,
right?
It could be, but
word on the street is
too.
The police just waited until Chris came off of stage, and backstage the LAPD were asking Chris if he wanted to press charges.
And that lends itself to say I'm wrong.
It's real.
That's what I heard through the grapevine a little bit.
That's just a story that got spun out. You never know.
You never know.
I don't know the truth of it, but
The Bachelor's not a thing, man. No, it's all this big show.
All I know is it's all over the Twitter this morning and last night. Right?
Yeah, and the memes have come out and they're amazing.
They are funny.
So, real or not, there's this whole, now it's like you're going to get all the articles on like biblical manhood. Did you see all that?
Oh,
it's like everybody's going to start writing about like what it looks like to be a man biblically and stand up for your wife. And
a soft answer turns away wrath. Alopecia. Right? I don't think that
don't think that was the.
That was the intent there. You know?
Somebody quoted Proverbs, and it was so funny. It was like a fool's lips invite anger, and a fool's actions invite a Will Smithing or something like that.
Oh my goodness,
really good. It was really good. But anyway, I don't know whether it was real or not. Let's say, all right, so we're all men in the room. This is the one podcast where it's all men, and we're all married. So let's say it was your wife. What do you do in Will Smith's situation? I just like to play this right quick. Kinsley and I talked about this a little bit. I was like, I wouldn't get on the platform and knock a dude out, but we'd probably leave. Hold on, time out. Don't tackle your mic.
Go ahead.
The one other thing that I was like, it lends itself to it being a little bit more real. Denzel Washington takes Will Smith aside to have a conversation with him about what just happened.
And it's good.
And that had to be real. And I don't think that happens. Usually you would think everybody's kind of in on the prank or whatever. It seemed like nobody's in on this prank.
Yeah.
And I think even Bradley Cooper kind of like tried to calm him down a little bit or something like that. But I don't think that happens necessarily if this was fake. But
unless they weren't in on it.
Unless they just weren't, and they thought it was real, and then Will Smith can be like, "It was a prank,
man."
Or whatever.
Hey,
I don't know.
We'll talk later.
It was if it was a prank by the Oscars, it was a bad one. If it was, the joke was bad, what happened was bad, what they showed was bad, all of it, poor taste. But anyway, I don't put anything past Hollywood these days either.
I don't think I would have stood up and walked across. Slap the dude for one. I definitely wouldn't have slapped the dude. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. But even then, I'm not going to do it. I don't know if I would have shouted. I probably would have just sat there fuming the whole time, and they would have left, and it would have been over.
That would have probably been me.
It would have torn me up having to not do something. Probably.
If it was really that offensive to me, I would have just pulled Kinsley and would have walked out. I'd have been like, just send me the Oscar in the mail. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
I would have had a private conversation with him.
Ooh, I wouldn't have. I would have left.
I would have done that first, but I would have had a private conversation with him at some point.
Maybe in my 30s I'll learn to do that, but right now in my 20s I'm not. So
it's a maturity you got to grow into.
It is. I'll grow into having conversations.
Which Will Smith is like 40 something.
Yeah,
he might be 50.
Is
Will Smith 50?
I don't know how old he is.
He is. He's
surely. You got the big computer.
If only we had a computer.
Vince is sitting in front of one right now.
Smith age 53.
Yeah.
September 25th is Will Smith's birthday. Don't forget this.
He's aged well. He's aged well. So here's the deal. Okay, so that's the slice for that. I mean, who knows whether it was real or not? It was definitely not the right thing for Will Smith to do.
Right.
Defending your wife and your family is the thing to do.
Yeah.
The way that was done, not the thing to do.
Agreed.
Right, yeah.
So anyway, speaking of, Vince.
Yo.
Today's all about you. You're our special guest today.
Today and every day.
Our honored celebrity guest. So,
start off with some slapstick humor, literally.
Yeah, right. So listen, where we go with pretty much any guest we've had on here, student or whoever, but I always like to start sort of at the beginning. If you'll just kind of walk us through like where you're from and like growing up a little bit, and then like when you met Jesus, like sort of that testimony of how you grew up, where you grew up, what you were like in high school, that kind of thing. And then, when did you meet Jesus? What were the circumstances around that?
Yeah. So I was born in Miami, Florida. Didn't live there very long. Moved up to just outside of Chattanooga and just upper northwest Georgia. Lived there throughout my childhood and adolescence. And growing up, my mother primarily was the one that took us to church, and we were part of an independent Baptist church that was just about, a stone's throw away from our neighborhood. Just it was the closest one, so that's where we ended up at. And my mother was part of the Nazarene church. My dad was Catholic, and we decided on going to a Baptist church. So
total sense.
Makes total sense, right? But was going there for many years, and knew about the gospel, knew about my need for a Savior. At one point, probably when I was about 12 years old, I think I I thought I was a Christian at that time. I remember praying the prayer of salvation in my bed late at night. Went and talked to the pastor, and he said, "No, you're probably not. This isn't the right time." So that was kind of awkward. It was an awkward moment. But then about
you're probably not.
You're probably not. I don't think you're ready yet, right? You're not ready for Jesus, right?
I've seen how you've been acting at VBS.
So, those popsicle, you can only do so much with those popsicle sticks, with craft time at VBS. But anyway, so about 2 years later, my mother, I guess one day after school, she took me downstairs in our basement, which we actually had those in the Chattanooga area. Took me downstairs in the basement, and she just shared the gospel with me, and it was right then and there that I came to saving faith and was baptized probably about a month later. And so that's sort of my
by that pastor.
Yes, by that pastor. Yes,
You convinced him.
It was time. Yeah, I guess I went back.
Take a second look over here.
I went back over to his house, and spoke with him.
Oh,
and
you went
to
his house. This was not like even at the church.
He had a parsonage. He had a parsonage,
okay.
Right down the road. And
if you don't know what parsonage is, it's a church-owned house that they shove the pastor into.
In Australia.
Yeah. A lot of older, smaller churches still have those. A lot of churches have sold them because they just can't afford it anymore, or need money or whatever. But in any case, was out of church between the time I was about 18 till I was 28. And once Dina and I got married, we both committed to being a part of a local church. So I missed out on 10 good years of ministry, among other things. And so that's sort of the gist of my story.
You've got two students with us, Lexi and Christian, who we're going to get on the podcast soon, I hope.
Oh, you don't know what you're getting yourself into.
We're going to get their side of the story of whatever you say today.
So is there a 10-second delay or something? Is there some kind of? You better use your mad editing skills for that one. So.
Yeah.
You'll find out a lot more about me.
So what do you do? So for most of our students know you as you're part of the pastor team here at Cross Point. Just talk about what do you do here specifically at Cross Point?
Yeah. So primarily I oversee our group's ministry, men's ministry. I guess I'm the pastor responsible for women's ministry as well, even though Paula Morey leads that. First Touch, M&M. So all the adult ministries in the church primarily.
Fight Club.
Fight Club men's
Wearing
ministry.
Fight Club,
right. So
speaking of Will Smith.
Right? This is appropriate to wear this today. And that was just
join Fight Club. We'll teach you to close your hand.
We'll teach you
none of this open hand stuff.
Don't break your thumb, right? Yeah. So
tuck the thumb.
but no, just adult ministries and wherever else is needed. Meet with people all the time, just like you do. Meet with people in my office all the time, doing counseling and things, and just trying to help people in their transforming years of walking with Jesus, and trying to help people to mature in the faith, and that's what we all do.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I was telling somebody just the other day. They were asking they're like, so you just do youth ministry? And I was like, yes and no,
right,
because of the way we work as a pastoral team.
Yeah,
we are all preaching and teaching, and we all have a hand in all these other ministries. It's kind of really cool. It's a cool cooperation we have.
We are not a siloed church anymore. Yeah. We still have a little bit of that, certainly, but we all take an active part in each other's ministries. Yeah. You take phone calls from people for 30 minutes. I mean, you do a wide range of things, right?
Yeah.
So.
That's an inside joke for those of you wondering what Vince is laughing about over there. So what are your general, right now, hobbies, pastimes, things you like to do away from the church?
I love fantasy sports, so we had a fantasy baseball draft, my first of the year. Dominated Joseph in that last night.
Last night,
so
he was distracted.
Paper champion right here.
I was about to say I wasn't even there.
Paper champion right here. So no, I love playing fantasy sports, fantasy football, fantasy baseball. I help coach Christian's baseball team, so I'm his assistant coach at Covenant Christian. Academy. We're 11-2, number 1 seed going into our tournament this coming week. So that's a lot of fun. Just getting to do that because I love baseball, I love sports. And then I coach some of his other baseball teams as well. Love table tennis, man.
Ping pong for those of you laymen's.
Yeah.
You're a pro when you call it table tennis.
Table tennis, love that.
John Martin's ears perking up.
Oh, there you go. That's right. And John's a good player as well. So I've taught Christian. Christian has now become the master in our family. He now beats me pretty consistently, not all the time, but
the apprentice has become the master.
He has become the master, right? So,
Can be only
and he's very competitive, as am I. So sometimes we butt heads. Don't slap each other, but sometimes we do butt heads when our competitive juices flow. So that's sort of the gist of it. Love spending time with my family. Love hanging out, watching TV, watching movies. Taking it easy.
Yeah, so I know sports are big with your family, and I think that's kind of where I thought would be a good topic for us to sort of land on as far as your conversation with us today, because one thing that we land directly in the middle of here in Madison is our students. This podcast is directed right to them.
Yeah.
Our students find themselves in the middle of one of the most active places that I've ever lived in as far as extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or whether it's building robots or whether it's, band or, music related things. And it doesn't necessarily even mean that's involved with a school, but they're finding programs out there just in our community. We have a number of things you can be involved in.
Sure.
Between art and athletics and everything in between.
Yep.
And so, one thing I know, Lexi and Christian both play sports.
Right.
You played sports growing up and stuff, and you still like to do the fantasy thing and
the over 40 baseball league too.
The over 40
starting that.
Hey, which we did all right in a softball league last year.
We did okay.
We did all right, and Purple Rain kind of squashed our dreams.
Man. Man, I'm telling you, yeah, they did.
But as far as the church teams that were involved, I think we were holding our own.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, with all that, there is within youth ministry. I don't know how aware you are of this conversation. I would assume you're probably pretty aware of this conversation. But within youth ministry, there are a lot of youth pastors that draw a hard line of we are against. Sports are taking kids away from church and all this kind of stuff. And, there's this huge pushback and almost an attack on kids that are choosing to do sports and things like that because it has taken them away from being involved in the youth group or whatever.
Right.
I'm going to unpack that a little bit, but that's the general conversation.
Yep.
And I am not that guy that feels that way 100%. There are some situations where I can say it has absolutely affected some people. But let me ask this. With sports and this balance of sports and faith, how much is too much? That's the question I kind of want to ask. And anyone listening, I want them to sort of be able to do a little introspection and self-evaluation of am I too heavily involved in other things and it's taken away from my faith?
Yeah.
But right now, so in your opinion, is there a too much factor? Because there's an enjoyment and then there's real competitive. There's the I play rec league or I play for the school during those seasons.
Sure.
And then there's we play year round every time the field is open, that kind of thing.
Right.
Is there a balance that can be struck there? Is there such a thing as too much sports?
Well, there is a lot to unpack there. We could spend a couple hours talking about this.
Yeah,
honestly.
We're not going to do that though.
We're not. We're not. So, listen, this has been a struggle for a long time because it's not just youth ministry. It affects the parents too, right?
Yeah.
So adult ministries as well.
Yeah, they got to get them there.
They got to get them there a lot of times, as they get older, obviously the kids can drive and stuff. My kids have both played travel sports. Lexi played, she played school. She played club volleyball and then school volleyball, which required some traveling on the weekends, tournaments and stuff, Saturdays and Sundays. Christians play travel baseball before.
And we're not talking about just traveling down the road. We're talking about like going down to Florida
2-3 hours away.
Up to Tennessee or
you
over
got the
Georgia.
national teams as compared to a lot of these travel teams will try to stay within an hour and a half away or something like that, right? So on the one hand, I don't want to be legalistic about it. I mean, we've certainly allowed our kids to go for weekend tournaments and stuff from time to time. The challenge is what's too much, and I think your family has to evaluate that for themselves.
You think it's a case by case kind of basis?
Yes and no, right? I mean, on the one hand, listen, these are their formative years of their Christian faith, right? So, on the one hand, what is that saying to them as far as the importance of gathering together corporately? So hopefully they have a good ecclesiology understanding, which many don't, right?
But not in those terms.
A good understanding of the local church, right? Their engagement and involvement and stuff.
Right.
And why it's important, right? It's not just something you do because your parents have always taken you. So you have to have that kind of background behind the importance of it.
Yeah.
But I think in some cases, yes, too much is too much. The reality is only a small percentage of kids get scholarships in their respective sports. For baseball, very limited, and even then, a lot of the scholarships are just partial. You know, so it can be too much. Is the team do they have a service themselves among the team? When they go out of town, I know some families who've done that. I know
I've not heard much of that on this level.
Not that much, but
now there's always there's a lot of times there's like a team chaplain that does things like during the week or things like that at practices and stuff.
Yes. So there has to be intentionality with that. Certainly, I mean, guys on the PGA Tour, they do that. They play every Sunday, but they have a service there. I know.
How would you like to be a PGA Tour chaplain? That would be.
There's
awesome.
other jobs I would hate more. So this is a delicate subject, as you know.
Yeah.
Because even we have a lot of families who are very engaged in travel sports. Their kids are exceptional at their respective sports, baseball, soccer, etc. And so I think you just you have to ask the question: is this going to be worth it? Number one, what are the potential hazards of keeping them out every weekend, right? And in some cases, it's not every weekend, but in some cases during the season, it seems like it's just about every weekend, right? So it's not even a cost factor in financially as much as it is a cost factor of, what is laying out on Sundays going to do going forward? Is it going to become easier to miss even when it's not baseball season?
That's what I was going to say. Is like
season?
there's this teaching component of like. We have got it almost like when COVID hit. Same thing. It's like when people are removed from their church family for a while,
right?
It becomes like an easy thing to do.
It's almost like right?
It's almost like you've ingrained that now into your regular schedule, whereas your regular schedule used to include going to church and being a part of the congregation. Now it's we've okayed it for the athletics, and that was for a season, but man, that just exhausted us so much. Like, let's just take this Sunday off and just relax at home and things like that. And pretty soon, and the reason I think it's a really dangerous game with students is parents are that stuff's being caught it's being taught to their kids just by example. It's not really something that they mean for that to catch hold in the student's life, but as they grow, like church begins to take a back seat to other things because they've made it okay so many times and so often.
Yeah, it gets easier, right?
Yeah.
You get it, and coming on Sunday mornings it's not a habit. It's not something that you do out of duty. It's a privilege to be able to come and worship with your church family. But at the same time, it gets easier and easier to get out of that habit of coming whenever you do go with sports. It's important to play multiple sports, not just the same sport year round. To get active in different ways and stuff, to let your body heal in different ways. But ultimately, I think it can be very detrimental to the family structure if too much athletics are going on the weekends. I know during COVID, for instance, with travel baseball, a lot of their tournaments used to be on Saturdays and Sundays. Since it seems like the majority of them are only on Saturdays now. So the problem is you get a rain out and it gets moved to Sunday, right? And so Christian has had to,
which happens all the time.
It happens all the time. So in those cases, Christian has missed the baseball games because they did get moved to Sundays. So again, I would do the same thing if I wasn't a pastor. I would probably let them go occasionally on Sundays, but for the most part, what are you doing the rest of the week as well? Are you spending time praying with your kids? Are you doing devotions? Are you doing other things towards their spiritual, engagement?
Yeah, me and Kinsley both come from families that were highly involved with sports. I can tell you, that was an important factor for, and back when we were coming up, coaches really didn't schedule things on Wednesdays and Sundays.
Right.
That only recently, probably past 10 years, became kind of a thing where Wednesdays and Sundays were no longer sacred times.
Right.
Football practice and baseball practice used to cut out early on Wednesdays so that you could get to church. And one thing is we came from a pretty small town, so my youth pastor was the team chaplain for everything, and so it was the coaches understood he wanted us to, it was kind of this relationship where it's obviously we're gonna let y'all go to church or whatever. I had one coach one time. I had 3 football coaches in 4 years, and one of my football coaches would he singled out the church guys. Think about this. So we would practice until whatever time, but on Wednesdays he would be like, all right, all the church guys can go. And so,
there you go.
90% of the team was in church during football season.
There you go.
That's one strategy.
And so anyway, but and it was if you stayed, you end up having to run at the end of practice and all that kind of stuff. But it was one of those. It was kind of funny.
Well, we live in a community where, baseball especially is much more popular here than it was in Jacksonville, where I moved from, and so you got a lot of accessibility here to different sports. Lacrosse is pretty big here.
Yeah.
There's just a variety.
And
of
we've
sports
got kids that have graduated and are seniors now and juniors now that are already committed to schools for sports. We've got a kid pitching at Alabama right now. We've got a kid who.
One heading to Troy, right?
One heading to Troy, and we've got a couple of girls that got soccer scholarships, and we've got one that's going to play college hockey. Just lots of different stuff. And they are good, and there's lots of opportunities. And for here, it seems like, I don't know, we are in the middle of an area that's very rare. I would say maybe within Alabama, probably Birmingham has a lot of these kind of caliber athletes in it. I don't, maybe Mobile, but really we are in a unique area as far as high achieving students.
Right.
And so there's this balance of, and what I see and what kind of upsets me honestly about a lot of youth pastors in this conversation is they push back so hard as to make students feel bad for wanting to achieve in a sport, or it doesn't even have to be a sport, but for the sake of this conversation, and I know that I'm caught in this generation of we do remember when Wednesdays and Sundays were pretty sacred times.
Yes.
And they're not like that anymore. And so there's a lot of pushback of man, I just can't stand how these teams are making them practice till 8:00 on a Wednesday, or there's a tournament that goes through Sunday and all this kind of stuff. And then once the kid does show up to church, they're berated for being a part of this team that made them practice or had a game on Wednesday or whatever. And my thing has always been okay, I don't want to be that guy who makes a kid feel bad for wanting to chase that passion. It's like you said, that's rare for a kid to get a scholarship, and even more rare for them to go pro in whatever.
Yeah.
There's a handful that will do it, but for the most part, the end of their high school career is the end of their sports career.
Right.
And I'm much more in the vein of how can I get involved with them in this sport more so than making them feel bad for being a part of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like, okay, you might miss my Wednesday night service for a season, and sometimes it seems like that season is 6 months long. But you might miss Wednesday nights for a season. Okay, well, are you involved in a small group? Okay, that's fine, because at least you're connected to the community a little bit. And I'm going to go try my best to watch a game. Now, we've got 100 kids on a roster that play sports, and it's like real hard to get to every game. But
right.
I'm going to try to come watch you play. But even more than that, I'm going to make sure I create an environment where you're invited to, like I've got a handful of kids that play golf. Like, I'm trying to get them to play golf on a Friday or a Saturday or something like that. And, you know, I hate to do it.
That's tough for you,
I hate
man.
to do
That's
it.
tough.
But I hate to do it, but I have to do it.
I've seen you play golf.
Or, whatever it is. I think it's much more practical, instead of pushing back against sports, to figure out how can we be involved with sports.
Yeah, see, here's one of the things that you and I, we as pastors, our kids have known nothing but attending on Sunday mornings.
Right. That's the other thing.
They've always been used to it. I mean, I can't speak for your kids, but I've never had to drag my kids to church.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a kid, I had to be dragged to church.
No, there's a day or two where like somebody didn't feel good or something,
Absolutely.
and Camden is like begging to go to church. He's like, "Why are we not going to church?"
No, there are days, and there are days that they just emotionally they're not capable, right? when they're very young, when they're very young and stuff. But for the most part, my kids have always loved going and always loved coming on Sunday mornings. But I think for us, and I can speak just for myself, I think for us it's because we made that a habit very early on. And I mean, if it was Sundays, we didn't, even if we didn't feel like it, we were coming, and so on the other hand, though, not everybody does that. And so as a result, I think from a very early time in a family's life, I think once they do get into these travel teams and these athletics on the weekends, I think they don't have as firm of a foundation of being a part of the local church because they have been off and on here or there growing up. And so I think for us, for instance, I think I don't know. Maybe there's some kind of correlation there between starting them early and getting them engaged very early on, to where when they do get older and are playing sports, they're still, even if they do play on a Sunday, they're still very, very connected with the local church.
Yeah, so. and you guys are even in a more specific situation with homeschool. Is like you're not a part of this like major high school that practices until 9 o'clock every night and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Now, I mean, I know you guys have
we do
plenty,
practice till 9 o'clock, but
usually I see Lexi and Christian on Wednesdays and things like that. So it's not taking them away from every church time.
No, because a lot of these teams you do have choices, right? I mean, with travel teams, you have choices on which team you're gonna look into. A lot of these travel teams are Christian led. I mean, they're strong. The coaches are strong Christian folks, and so for them, Wednesdays and Sundays are important to them not to have.
So that's a really important caveat here. Is like, are you researching a team that's going to aid in the faith of your kid? You know what I'm saying? Like. Yeah, that seems to be important, because if you've got a coach or a organization anyway that doesn't care at all whether you go to church or not, more oftentimes they're going to err on the side of, hey, we're going to schedule a game or a practice overlapping your church time. Yes, and so then you're in the position of you've got to choose. Right. And if you're in a part of a organization that's not necessarily a Christian organization but has coaches and organizers that are believers, there's probably going to be a little bit more latitude on that.
I've seen that. That's absolutely true.
And so I think that's important for any parents that are listening to this, but students too. Ask this to your parents. If you're getting involved in a rec league or a travel league, like research that. Like, is this going to be a league that's going to help you have a faith balance with athletics a little bit easier. I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, you can do some research. I know specifically with baseball, but I know volleyball too. But with baseball, there are plenty of travel organizations here that are founded on have biblical foundations. And the coaches are wanting to see these kids develop not only athletically but also spiritually and in terms of character and things of that sort. So,
I think every coach sort of has that in the back of their mind, or not every, but a lot of coaches I know have that in the back of their mind, but the skills of the game take precedence almost every time. So
well,
I mean,
yeah.
And that's their job. That's what they're there to do, is win baseball games or football games or whatever games. And so I don't fault them for that. That's why a team chaplain comes in, and that's like why that sort of relationship is really important. And I know that there's been like atheistic groups and stuff that really push back on team chaplains now, and some coaches, especially in public school, they don't want to deal with that. So, team chaplains aren't quite as welcome as they used to be.
Right.
So I've been able to get involved with some teams, but most coaches are like, I don't want a letter coming in my mail about how I'm doing some sort of wrong thing about religious freedom or whatever.
Well, but that's also why you coach. I mean, you're coaching, your son's team, and I can just tell you in my
I coach because they begged me to. Not
well, that happens too, right? Sometimes it's a forced hand, right? But in my 6 years of coaching, listen, I've had so many opportunities to minister to these kids. I have changed my coaching style certainly, because I'm very passionate on the ball field. But I've had kids whose parents have died, and I've had so many opportunities like that where they needed prayer and just encouragement and things of that sort. And so there's so many opportunities on that end of the spectrum too, about being a big influence in your community through local sports. So.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. And, we're just now getting into the, like, Camden is 5, about to turn 6 this next month. And, this is his first year of, like, competitive baseball, like where it actually looks like baseball and there's a scoreboard. We played 4 years and 4-year-old and 5-year-old, and there's no score, and it barely looks like baseball at all. But we're getting into it now, and I can tell there's a coach even in the 4-year-old league that's making them practice almost every night. Linda was telling me that about Pierce.
Wow.
Like, they were like, it's like, I think it was Pierce, or maybe it was one of Carson's old coaches, but had him out there all the time, and I'm like, what?
Well, and see, that's just it. Christian didn't start playing baseball until he was 8, so I didn't worry about burnout with him so much. Yeah. But yet, when you look at something like baseball, for instance, you see these kids that start at a very early age. Having to practice every single night like that is there's a good chance it's going to cause burnout pretty quickly in some of these kids. And usually you see a lot of them will stop playing baseball once they turn 13, right?
Well, that was my story. Like I got into high school ball and then quit because not that I wasn't good or didn't like baseball, it was just too much.
Yeah.
I was like I have played enough baseball. And it was like time to move on.
Right.
I wish I would have just played on through high school, but good grief, like I had just gotten worn out on all the practices and all the games.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even anything compared to what our students are going to.
Did you play spring and fall both? Because I only played spring baseball growing up.
Yeah,
did you play both?
I only played spring and summer.
Yeah. So you think about that. I mean, these kids are playing year round. They're playing for
that
travel
was just
teams
becoming a thing too when I was growing up. Like I remember you didn't even hear about travel ball. Like travel ball was like elite level ball. And like very few kids were doing that.
Right.
Like we had maybe 3 guys on our team that played travel ball.
Yeah.
And then by the time we graduated high school, most of them were playing travel ball.
Yeah. Now you got. And
now it's like if you don't play travel ball, it's like you're behind the eight
you
ball.
are. I mean, you can still get discovered, by recruiters these days if you don't. But a lot of these recruiters go to these big perfect game tournaments and stuff, and so guys are playing school ball, they're playing Legion baseball, they're playing travel ball. I mean, it's literally year round.
Soccer's the same way. Football is a little bit bit more seasonal. I mean, your body can't handle football year round like that, but there's camps throughout the summer and things like that you got to go to. So, and that's a weekend long and a state away and that kind of thing. So it's just a ton of stuff going on. And, not to mention, like you said, lacrosse and some of these peripheral sports that aren't necessarily the big three of basketball, baseball, and football, but, and all these students are going hard after it as hard as they can, and I'm glad for them, and I love the accolades that they get. It's just I see sometimes where, because also there's this flip side. If you spend an exorbitant amount of time with your sports team and less time with your church family, there's the old cliche, you got locker room talk, right?
Yeah.
It's like there are some very negative personality traits that can start to seep in if you spend too much time away from a Christ-centered community.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think that's really one of the premier dangers that I see. Listen, as long as you can be involved with your church family as much as is possible during a season, and you can somehow stay connected to Christ-centered community, I'm good with you playing whatever sport whenever.
Yeah.
It's when I start to see those habits change, and even when you could go to church, you don't go to church.
Right.
And when I start to see those personality traits start to change, of like, oh, you've started letting a few words slip out every now and then, or I can tell that you're talking to people differently, or you know what, you're kind of forming like a weird clique, and you're kind of pushing people away that aren't with your sports team or whatever. When that kind of thing starts to happen, those are red flags.
Yeah,
as far as like you're something's going on with your faith, and it's not just you like to play sports. It's like you've kind of gotten pulled down a little bit.
Well, as we always talk about, right? The horizontal relationships are affected by your vertical. So when things start slipping with God, then they start slipping in your relationships with friends, with church members and stuff. I mean, you're already dealing with the challenges in youth ministry here of dealing with multiple schools, and having a youth group filled with kids from multiple schools, right? If it's one thing being in a church where you're all from the same community, you're all from the same schools and stuff, everybody kind of knows each other, right? But here you're dealing with a different dynamic, which makes it extremely difficult. And then when you have kids that are playing these sports and they're not as engaged at different parts of the season, it does become there are a lot of difficult interpersonal issues that develop from that. And if you start seeing, some students sort of changing, not for the good in this case, those are red flags.
Let me ask you this: as a dad who your kids are in sports, as a pastor, and as someone who has been there, what's the most appropriate steps to take once you realize I've started slipping? Like, man, I'm starting to catch myself saying the wrong things or doing the wrong things, or my actions are sort of taking me away from my faith in Christ. You're looking less and less Christ-like anyway. When you start to see that and you kind of pinpoint the fact that, okay, I'm spending too much time with this and not enough time with the Lord, what do you see as some of the, like, what would be your advice on, like, okay, what do you do?
Yeah,
what's the correction?
It's tough. I mean, and there's so many different variables with that, certainly. But we have a tendency every night to pray together as a family. First of all,
sure.
We always do that every single night. A lot of times it's interesting how at least our kids have a tendency to talk with us about their days and stuff, especially Lexi. Christian, not so much.
We'll ask them about that. We'll ask them about
that. But obviously spending time with the Lord, and not from just a routine standpoint of I need to read this and this and this, but really seeking God, repenting for sins immediately, and if you start seeing some slippage in terms of your faith and stuff, and you gotta evaluate what's causing this. I mean, obviously, we're always in a struggle of wanting our own interests first, right? We're always battling the flesh, and we're selfish in that way. So I think
Well,
a lot of times,
let's say you pinpoint it to the fact that okay, it is that my athletics are taking way too much time away from my time with my church family.
Yeah.
And less time with them is making me less disciplined, even in my personal time with the Lord. Let's say you kind of pinpoint it to the fact that you are spending all of your margin and you're wearing yourself out on your athletics.
Yeah.
What would be, you've pinpointed that's the thing. What do you start to do?
That's
what
a
do you
tough one,
change?
right?
Yeah, what do you change?
I mean, because in a lot of these cases, the coaches have expectations, high
Right.
expectations that some of these high-level teams anyway.
And if you sit out, you're
You're going to lose your spot.
You're going to lose your spot at least.
Yeah. So again, I mean, it varies. If you're talking rec ball, if you're talking something like that, there's a lot more margin that you can create. But maybe you decide, I'm not going to go year round with this sport.
Right.
Or again, you play you're a multi-sport athlete, perhaps that has different schedules to where you're not always out the same days and stuff. But you have to do something. You have to make that kind of change. I think in your schedule and in your personal life, to where you got to evaluate what's important. Is my faith the most important thing in my life, or is it playing two sports at the same time? I've got friends that are playing multiple sports concurrently, and I mean they have no margin.
Yeah.
Is it impacting their faith? I would think it'd have to at some level.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't really have great advice for that, honestly. I mean, I think you have to do a real honest assessment. Is my personality changing? Am I becoming more or less Christ-like than I was? How big of a priority is this? It really is about
You got to make
priorities.
some realistic
You
decisions
do.
too, like realistic of like, what's my goal for my athletic career?
At some point you have to ask yourself those questions, right? Can I live a life where I'm not I'm not going to go. You tried to walk on in Alabama, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. But at some point, I think
That was
most
stupid, by the way.
Well,
Really?
but listen,
We'll tell that story sometime.
But listen, I mean, you gave it a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not living with regret. Thinking, man, I wish I would have tried. At least try out for that.
In football, I felt like I could do that. That's why I ended up quitting baseball my freshman year of high school. It was like I got to the point where I was like, I'm putting so much time into this, and I'm okay, but I'm not going to be a college athlete.
Yeah.
And I'm much less MLB. I was like, I'm good.
Yeah.
And so I just backed away from it.
Yeah.
There's part of me that wishes I still would have, but I played intramural softball and things like that. And I got, sports did not go away. You know what I'm saying? But I got to put it in a little bit better perspective.
Yeah, I mean, all I can say with this is that it would do so much more harm if our faith was less important than sports.
Right.
And again, we may say that, but what does that look like practically speaking, day in, day out? Is your schedule more reflective of your love of baseball or football or soccer, or is it more reflective of your love of Jesus? Right. Yeah. And again, it's going to be different for everybody. Everybody handles it a little differently. But what you don't want to see happen is what often happens, once these young people go to college, and it's easy at that point to get distracted away from Jesus. And you have to just make some hard decisions on what is going to be most important to you, and what parameters you're going to put in place in your own life to say, okay, enough's enough. This is too much.
Yeah.
I can't let this affect my relationship with Jesus in the local church.
I heard it said one day, and it's always kind of stuck with me, that in relation to football, but I'll just put it in general sports. Like, sports are a wonderful activity, but a terrible God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? A lot of times it's said, football is an incredible sport, but it's a terrible God. But I mean, and that's the danger of it becomes an idol to us. Like that's where we devote all of our passion and all of our priority.
Yeah, I'm here to hit dingers, right? I mean, seriously, you see that.
My name's Joseph, and I hit dingers.
I hit dingers. You really see that at the t-ball level. I mean, parents. I don't know if y'all.
This is why I didn't want to coach. Yeah,
parents at the t-ball level, especially. Oh my goodness, it can be very, very
our
difficult.
First practice this year. Okay, this is the first year where we're going to be competitive and keep score, that kind of thing. We won our first game, by the way, 21-15.
Nice.
No, 21-9.
21-9.
21-9. And so anyway, but our very first practice, all right, you're getting to know the kids. I've got to understand their swing a little bit better. I'm pitching the ball to them. So, and they're all different heights.
Yeah.
And so you're like trying to figure out how to pitch to each kid. I had Kinsley, he didn't know that Kinsley was my wife at the time, but like all the parents are sitting in the bleachers just, watching practice and things like that. And I'm pitching to this one particular parent's kid. And like she said, he was just like giving it heck about how I was throwing the ball to their kid. And and there's more that can be said, but I was like, oh, if this is going to be how it's going to be.
Yeah.
But I learned how to pitch to this particular kid. I mean, he's a real short kid and doesn't have a great swing. And so, I figured out how to, he went 3 for 4 or so in our game the other day.
It's not bad.
And I'm like,
he got good pitching.
And I'm like, just give him time. He got good pitching
in the game. Yeah.
So anyway, but I'm saying like even then it was like practice number 1, and I was like, okay, we're in a different level now. And it's 6 years old.
Yeah, no, it's like that. I mean, what you got, what parents learn is they learn who the parents are, so they can figure out whether to talk bad about,
to say something
about the kids or not. Right? I've seen that. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. That's why it's also good to be on the baseball field, so you're not really hearing that. You know.
Yeah.
So
it really doesn't bother me. Yeah.
Right.
But I have yet to see the really, really bad stuff, like a parent like really yelling onto the field at a kid or at a coach or something like that, but it's coming, I'm sure.
I saw it in rec ball last fall at 13U, and we this is up in Monrovia. We had a team from out of the park that came to play against us.
Oh, you told me this story.
And that team, I mean, they were arguing with the umpires back and forth, and I mean to the point where they were cursing out the umpires. They were their coaches were starting to bow up against the other coaches of our Monrovia team, and they eventually took their team and left. And of course, the park had called police because it was just the parents were irate. I mean, that tells you something right there, right?
Yeah.
It's one thing to be loud and be engaged and involved in your team and cheering on your team and stuff. I mean, I'm a big critic of cheering against the other team, right? And as the teams get older, and you'll see this, is that you start seeing parents from the other team cheer against your team, and it's like, really?
Kick them in the knee.
That gets aggravating to me. So anyway,
well, and that that's the thing is like this past Saturday was our opening day, our very first game, and we beat that team really bad, but the whole time, both sides kept a really good attitude.
Yeah.
It's always when one person decides to be a jerk, like it just compiles at that point.
Yeah, I can tell you this, and I know this from experience, and I'm not a professional at this or trained or whatever, but if you get the parents...
stay at a Holiday Inn Express.
Yes. You get the parents out there and umpire a game, and I've done it a few times.
Yeah.
It is so much harder than you realize because there's so much going on at one time, especially plays at the plate. Whenever you're a single umpire and you're calling balls and strikes from behind the pitcher's mound, and then the ball's in play and you're having to run towards the bases to see everything. There's a lot more to it than you think, and so it's easy to be a Saturday afternoon quarterback, whatever they call it, and
that's the one thing I don't envy at all is these umpires and referees for different sports.
It's hard.
Like that,
It's hard, and some of them have bad attitudes, but some of
that's how I met Kinsley. Did you know that?
Did she have a bad attitude?
She was umpiring, and he went and yelled at her.
No, right. I was refereeing a basketball game that her brother was playing in.
Okay,
and I saw her in the stands, and I was like, "Hey, what's up, hottie?" And
like these stripes.
You like these stripes? Oh goodness. yeah, so that's our story. That's our story.
There you go. No, but it does give you perspective when you actually get out there, because you want the boys to have fun, you want them to enjoy themselves, you want it to be an accurately called game, and these umpires, I mean, they're doing the best they can for the most part. For the most part,
in totality, you are using sports not as a pathway to a career. A lot of times you've got your kids, my kids, I don't have any notions of grandeur that my kids are going to be professional athletes.
Right.
If they do, good on them. Maybe they'll buy me a house and stuff like that. But in regards to sports, though, it's like you put your kids in sports because one, maybe, hopefully they like it. Hopefully you're not putting them there against their will.
Right. I've seen that.
Yeah, a ton. Yeah. Dad loved sports, so you're going to play sports.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But if they love camping or if they love music or whatever, get them to do something that gets them active. But at the same time, sports specifically teaches a whole lot of life lessons.
No doubt.
So you're trying to teach your kid how to lose with class, and how to fight with grit, like not fight, but you know what I'm saying, like fight through,
fight through adversity.
Adversity is the word I'm trying to. It's like how to face that kind of stuff. It's like how to be tough and mentally and physically tough. And there's just so many life lessons, but you don't want it to become an idol, like we said.
Yeah.
And so there's that faith and athletic. I think athletics probably has a higher temptation to pull people away from faith than just about any extracurricular activity I know of. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I mean,
now there's different ways. There's different ways. I know that, like the arts, for instance, like I know there's that world, theater, even like painting, all that kind of stuff. But theater, that music, the arts, it's a whole. I don't think time wise, it's quite as much time that it's needed, but
there's a pull away from Christianity in that world.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's much more liberalized in a way. It's like truth is relative, and that kind of thing. There's a little bit of a slope
because there's freedom in our artistic, creativity.
You go from artistic freedom to you forget who the artist is and the creator, and you kind of lose sight of that because you become a creator.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, and that's a God-given thing, and we're made to do that. We're made to be artistic.
Yeah, I'm an advocate for sports. I think it builds character, especially team sports, right? It's not just about you, but you're part of a bigger thing, and you're contributing in such a way to try to find success. And so there's a lot of good that sports can do by all means. But like anything else, too much of one thing can sometimes lead to idolatry and and a movement away from the body of Christ and Christ Himself. So, like with anything else, I love to eat, right? I put on some weight, right, recently, but I love to eat, but too much of it, not good. A little bit of it. At a place like Tim's Cajun Kitchen or something like that,
Good. We are looking for podcast sponsors, Tim. So
we'll do it from your eating area.
There you go.
Live from Tim's Cajun Kitchen. But absolutely. Too much is, that's gluttony. Gluttony doesn't have to just be about food,
right? No,
it's
an overindulgence in something.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, we can take
lust is the same way.
We can take any good thing that God has made and turn it into an idol.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
And athletics is one of those things that
good.
just the fun and the entertainment portion of it, the physical challenges associated with it, all those are good things, but we can definitely take it too far.
Yeah. It's a great activity. It's a terrible God.
Yep.
So. Well, I think we're probably going to wind it down on that. Caleb, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, but not enough to shrink it down to another 10 minutes or so. I got like an hour-long thought, so we'll have to save that for another day.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right, part 2.
Maybe you have to bring me on another time or something, and we can continue this conversation.
Sure. We'll let the viewers determine that.
No, it's kidding. Just kidding. It's been awesome having you on. You're the first pastor we've had on the show.
Well, I feel privileged. So to all of you out there, I feel privileged to be on this show, and thank you.
You got your boot on today?
No boot today.
No boot today,
No, I went to a
man.
chiropractic appointment this morning. I didn't have it on. So
Okay, all right. Well, thanks for being on, Pastor Vince.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
From all of us at Figuring It Out, we are figuring out how to balance faith in sports or any extracurricular activity. So take this with a grain of salt. Like, I mean, it doesn't. We didn't speak to absolutely every situation, but I think we've gotten into some good territory of like how to manage a faith life balance a little bit. So I think that's been good. It's been a great conversation. I've loved it. So listen, like, and share the podcast if you want to keep it going, and we'll see you next time on Figuring It Out.